The Iranian dictatorship's aggression continues to this day.
The latest move by the Trump administration to reimpose sanctions is a reminder that, currently for Iran, the U.S. is more foe than friend.
I recently reported from Iran, a rare trip for any Western journalist.
You're hearing the voice of reporter Kim Helmgart. It's been the first time in more than a decade USA Today has visited Iran.
In the shops and restaurants of Tehran, hospitality abounds, and most Iranians tell you we have no problem with the American people.
But between governments, animosity has raged for decades. So how did we get here? We have the facts. Let's go back to 1951. Iran's first elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh saw that the wealth needed to develop Iran was leaving the country in the form of oil. He decided to take it back. For 50 years, oil reserves had been under the control of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, the predecessor to BP, a UK company. Mossadegh became hugely popular in Iran for nationalizing Iranian oil production, exerting control of this precious resource and keeping oil money in Iran. But this made Mossadegh wildly unpopular with the American and British governments. The United States also took notice of Mossadegh's nationalism and feared he was veering too close to communism. So the newly formed CIA engineered a coup called Operation Ajax, ousting Mossadegh and reinstalling Mohammad Reza Pahlavi as Shah. And to no one's surprise, the Shah saw to it that oil was once again regulated through the West. For the next 20 years, the Shah's position of power was guaranteed by the U.S., and the U.S. received Iranian oil at a favorable price. The Shah spurred modern economic development through the White Revolution, which promoted progressive political changes, including allowing women the right to vote. But it came at a price: autocratic rule and corruption. He created a huge economic gap, forcibly tried to rid the country of Islam, and employed a secret police trained by the U.S. military, called the Savak, to torture, execute, and stifle dissent. His secret police were so brutal that Amnesty International named them one of the world's worst violators of human rights. The Shah crushed all political opposition by using troops to massacre demonstrators and by killing or exiling their leaders. Finally, in 1978, Iranians took to the streets, forcing the Shah out of power. Fearing for his life, the Shah fled and eventually landed in the United States. After spending 14 years in exile for opposing the Shah's regime, Shah critic and Islamic fundamentalist Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned and proclaimed Iran to be the Islamic Republic of Iran. Khomeini brought various religious clerics to power and new religious laws were enforced. Women and men had to wear certain clothing. Alcoholic drinks, Western movies, and men and women swimming together were all banned. Music and television were also heavily regulated. Iran demanded the Shah be returned to stand trial for his crimes. And on November 4th, 1979, when the U.S. declined the request, a group of Iranian college students took over the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. As a result, 52 American citizens were held hostage for a total of 444 days, the longest hostage crisis in recorded history. One failed military rescue ordered by Jimmy Carter resulted in the deaths of 8 American servicemen and 1 Iranian civilian. The hostages were formally released back to the U.S. just minutes after newly elected President Ronald Reagan was sworn into office. Hoping to take advantage of the revolutionary chaos, Iraq invaded Iran in 1980. The United States sided with Iraq, and throughout the 8-year war, America supplied President of Iraq Saddam Hussein with intelligence reports, billions of dollars, military technology, and chemical weapons. Pretty much leading to years of back and forth open conflict and numerous proxy wars between the United States and Iran, including but not limited to the Iran-Contra scandal, the anti-communist purge, Iranian Air Flight 655, the Syrian civil war, the Yemeni crisis, Darfur, tariffs, sanctions, naval disputes, covert actions, detained diplomats, detentions of hikers, drone incidents, threats to close the Persian Gulf, frozen assets, as well as the threat of nuclearization by Iran. After years of back-channel talks, President Obama and 6 other parties, China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, Germany, and the European Union, signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the Iran Nuclear Deal, in which Iran would discontinue a weaponized nuclear program in exchange for a rollback of economic sanctions, opening a new chapter in the relationship between the U.S. and Iran, which brings us to today.
The United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
A move the Iranian government has condemned. causing relations between the two countries to go from poor to worse.
Many people I talked to in Iran were anxious about what the sanctions would mean for their livelihoods, for their access to essential goods, and more generally, what they will mean for Iran's place in the world and its fraught relations with the West.
It's just the latest blow in a fight that has been going on for decades.